Savage Kitchen. We're going to be baking today because I just don't learn. I don't bake, and I keep proving it and trying anyway. So today I am going to be making a recipe that my wonderful editor, Christina, her mom gave to me to make. This is an eggnog cake. It's the holidays. I love eggnog. I have another video on how to make homemade eggnog, which is like a little bit traumatic, but worth it as it turns out. And we are going to be using said homemade eggnog in this recipe. You can absolutely make this with store-bought eggnog. You don't need to be a maniac and make this, but it's pretty good. Just saying. Okay, so this recipe, I'm going to be cheating and looking at my notes here so that I don't disappoint Rhonda. I want to follow her instructions to the letter, mostly. We're going to be making this with a little bit of bourbon, because bourbon. And I think that this is going to be a really pretty bundt cake when we're all done. So you could make your own yellow cake if you want, but the recipe calls for pre-made yellow cake mix. Thank God, because I seriously don't bake, and if this makes your life easier, go for it. So the instructions on this couldn't be easier, and I will have the exact measurements in the description below, but you start with 1 package of yellow cake mix. Then this calls for 2 tablespoons of butter in addition to a 1/4 cup of melted butter. Hopefully this butter is soft enough. I'm gonna like cut it up into smaller pieces just to make it easier to mix. I feel like if I knew how to bake, that would be something somebody would be like, yeah, duh, that's what you do. And then 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, which I'm just going fresh, which means we're gonna wing it because that's pretty much how I do everything. And then 2 whole eggs. You don't have to separate the white from the yellow, which again, if you watched my how to make homemade eggnog video, is clearly a very trying task. Oh, oh, don't you. 1/4 cup of melted butter, and then 1.5 cups of eggnog. I've already spiked this eggnog with bourbon, so I don't think we're gonna add any more bourbon to this. Shocking, I know. But I don't want to disappoint Rhonda, and if this recipe is off, I feel like I'm going to be in big trouble. So we're just going to stick with what's in here. All right, give this a good mix. Into the bundt pan we go. So I'm going to spray this bundt pan and flour it because I was told to. Because I have no instincts when it comes to baking. I can cook anything. Suck at baking. Oh, well, can I just...
Yeah, you can do that too. I also said you can use your hand.
This seems like the wrong way to do anything. Is that okay?
Yeah, get on the sides. Like, yeah, just use your hand.
Whatever. So I've already preheated the oven to 350 because I know to do that much. So we're going to put our batter in the bundt. All right, into the oven at 350 for 45 minutes. So we baked this in the oven at 350 degrees for 45 minutes, took it out of the oven and let it cool in the bundt pan, and then flipped it over and let it cool some more. You're gonna notice there's a situation happening on top of this cake, and that is from the flour in the bundt pan is just sort of sticking to the outside of the cake because I don't know what I'm doing when I bake. I just know what tastes good. So if you know how to flour a bundt pan, you won't have this issue. If you do have this issue, it doesn't matter because we're about to cover this up with a bourbon sugar glaze and it's going to be delicious. So let's set this aside for just a minute. I have about 1 cup of powdered sugar here, also known as confectioner's sugar, and my old friend bourbon. And so all we're going to do is add a couple of ounces of bourbon to this powdered sugar and whisk it together. We're going to start with maybe like just shy of 2 ounces. You can always add more. It's hard to take it away. You can always add more sugar if you need to. And let's give this a whisk. This is also the same glaze that I use on my bourbon chocolate banana bread, which is right here. That's happening next. I'll put a link to that up here if you want to. Are we haunted? The as I was saying. Hold on, what the was I saying? Oh, this smells so good.
Come on, Jessica.
I'm so distracted by the smell of bourbon and sugar right now. Jesus. Okay. So this bourbon sugar glaze is also the same glaze that I use on the bourbon chocolate banana bread, which is happening next. And I'll put a link to that recipe up here. But it really couldn't be easier. Just whisk together some bourbon and some powdered sugar until you have a nice liquidy consistency. I'm sure people are less messy than I am about this. And this, as it's exposed to air and sits out on a cake, it's gonna harden just a touch. It won't stay quite this liquidy. Also, if your consistency isn't right, just add a little more bourbon, or if it's too watery, add a little more sugar. It's gonna be fine. And we're just gonna pour this right over the center of our cake. Oh yeah. Oh, pretty excited about this. I'm gonna go back. Wow. All right, I feel like that was just enough. If you wanted to be like super neat about this, you could pour the sugar while this is still on a cooling rack so that when you transfer to a cake plate or a cake pedestal, you won't have the dripped glaze. But I kind of like the dripped glaze. Also, you know what would be awesome in here? So it's a bundt cake, right? If you've ever watched My Big Fat Greek Wedding, there's a hole in this cake. I think it would be fun to fill this with maybe sugared cranberries so you have an acidic element to counter the sweetness of the eggnog cake. I instantly regret not making sugared cranberries. Like, that would have been awesome with this. We'll have to make it again. Okay, let's cut into this and give it a taste. It does feel sort of a shame to cut this. It's so pretty. Ooh. Okay. Drooling over there. More glaze. It was really good. Hold on, you need to taste this since you know what it tastes like.
It already looks different.
Does it?
It's darker.
It needs the glaze.
Yeah, it's usually moister when my mom makes it, but it's still very good.
Apparently I failed.
Is that what I said?
Yeah, it does seem a little dry. Oh, you just taking that with you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, verdict is Rhonda may be a better baker than I am, which shocks no one. But this is pretty delicious. Highly, highly, highly recommend making. I would say when doing the glaze, do more than I did. I don't think I did quite enough. I had a cup of sugar and 2 ounces of bourbon. I would quite honestly double that and then go do this once and then do it again. So you let it harden a little bit and then do like a second layer over it. So you get a little bit more of the glaze on this delicious eggnog cake. So happy holidays. Good luck baking. Hopefully you're better than I am. And stay tuned. More eggnog fun coming up. Cheers, friends.